Hello, adventurers. My name is Chance. Welcome to my spellbook, and thank you so much for tuning into the 23rd episode of our background series. Today we have a very nice background in store for us. I don't know, it is one of the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica backgrounds, so it's a cut above a couple of the other ones, to say the least, but I think this has a ton of interesting flavor, although you can make an argument that it replaces a couple of the PHB backgrounds, namely the Urchin background, if I had to give one in particular. That being said, if you're a dungeon master and you don't like the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica backgrounds, they're optional, just say you don't allow them. Enough said. In any case, today we're going to be taking a look at the Golgari Agent, which kind of fits in with the theme of cities, as you might imagine, as with most of the other Guildmaster Guide to Ravnica backgrounds. Now, let's take a look at its description here. You have spent your life in the dark places of the city, where the messy parts of existence are on display. Basically the slums, for lack of a better term, maybe even a little bit lower than that. Basically, you occupy the bottom rung of society. For whatever reason, who knows, you might have just been a guy down on your luck, or you might even prefer that environment over the complicated, snooty, kind of elite realm. In any case, no matter how you get there, that's your starting out point. Now let's look at your extended spell list, which is pretty good overall. As cantrips, you gain access to Dancing Lights and Spare the Dying. First level, you gain access to Entangle and Ray of Sickness. Second level, Protection from Poison, Ray of Enfeeblement and Spider Climb. Third level, Animate Dead and Plant Growth. Fourth level, Giant Insect and Grasping Vine, and fifth level, Cloud Kill and Insect Plague. Basically the grimy parts. I would make an argument that this is probably one of the less overwhelming spell list editions. That being said, Animate Dead is probably one of the most notable ones on here. All the other ones are either strictly utility, kinda meh, or at best control spells. So, Giant Insect and Grasping Vine are pretty good, and Cloud Kill is great in general, but those are 4th and 5th level spells, and most casters, most pure casters will get them for sure, but a lot of half casters, it's probably not going to be your first choices. That being said, let's move on to its mechanics here. Under skill proficiencies, you gain access to Nature and Survival. Tool proficiencies, you gain the Poisoner's Kit. Under languages, you can select one of Elvish, Giant, or Crawl. And under equipment, you have the Golgari Insignia, the Poisoner's Kit, a pet beetle or spider, set of common clothes, and a belt pouch containing 10 GP. I would like to point out that there is a fire beetle, is what I believe it's called, and it's basically a beetle that gives off light. We go over it in the Beast series, so be sure to check that out. I think that would make a welcome addition to this, and I don't see why it couldn't be a familiar if you decided to take the Find Familiar spell. Overall, these mechanics are quite good, although in particular urban or cushy environments, I would imagine it being a little bit lackluster. Nature and survival are great skills to have when you're out in the wilderness typically, or in just rougher situations in general, so there might be, you might be stuck with a party that has a particular habit, I guess, of occupying those higher spheres of influence. That being said, it might make for some interesting roleplay opportunities to see them in your environment, and vice versa. In any case, that's kind of the biggest drawback here. Outside of that, the Poisoner's Kit is a pretty strong tool proficiency to have, and in terms of the languages, I feel like most people pick Elvish, although, depending on your campaign, it might make sense to go with one of the other ones. Now let's take a look at your feature, namely Undercity Paths. You know hidden underground pathways that you can use to bypass crowds, obstacles, and observation as you move through the city. When you aren't in combat, you and companions you lead can travel between any two locations in the city twice as fast as your speed would normally allow. The paths of the Undercity are haunted by dangers that rarely brave the light of the surface world, so your journey isn't guaranteed to be safe. This is really interesting, and this would be a good place for those nature and survival skills to be put to good use. Simple checks here and there can be used to likely determine how successful your speedrun would be. I do think this is relatively interesting and might make for some cool encounters with the underbelly of society, or provide your party with some alternative methods of reconnaissance. Overall, I like it. Its usefulness and mileage may vary from campaign to campaign. Obviously, if you're in a city-focused campaign, this is going to be super useful, especially in plots or quest lines where time is an issue. However, outside of that, this isn't something you're going to be able to use in the middle of the forest. It doesn't offer a ton of utility benefit, and it's likely something that some party members are going to object to. Once again, kind of calling out those party members that might be from the higher classes. Now let's move on to some suggested characteristics here. For personality traits, I went with sometimes I give a voice to the whispers of rot, which I can hear but no one else does. Under ideal, I went with stoicism. All of us are part of the cyclical march of nature, which will continue with or without us. And this is a neutral, maybe even nihilistic view. Under bond, I have an identical twin who is as different from me as any person could be. And for the flaw, I went with I don't bother to couch my opinions in flattering words. Now, I think this is one of the more interesting sets of characteristics. Basically, you might be a little bit crazy, or the voices you hear might be right. In terms of how you would create something like this, I'm imagining a go rogue, then assassin, then multiclass into warlock, depending on how far you want to take that voice of rot. It would of course be your patron. Very interesting stuff, and I like the idea of having a twin as kind of an interesting element of play that operates in the higher classes and might be good, might be evil, you might be good, might be evil. Doesn't really matter how you want to roleplay it. I do think it is a very interesting and gives the Dungeon Master a lot to work with. Now let's get to my personal thoughts on it. As with really all of the Ravnica backgrounds, I think they're all really incredible. The Golgari agent maybe slightly less so, just because of their spell or extended spell list not really having anything overwhelmingly good, at least not in comparison to a lot of the other Ravnica backgrounds, and its feature being circumstantially useful at best. Its mechanics in general are quite strong, however, there's an interesting mix there between them and the feature. By that what I mean is having nature and survival in the wilderness is a good thing, and in the city, slightly less useful. However, having the Undercity Paths feature in the city is a good thing, but in the wild it's essentially useless. So it really is kind of hit or miss. I suppose you can make the argument that it's balanced in that regard. However, I don't know, I find backgrounds are usually better when they double down on one particular element of play, where the Golgari agent is kind of spread out all over. And now that I'm really thinking about it, the spell list reflects that to some degree, having a lot of utility, control, and circumstantially useful spells in there. In any case, let me know what you think of the Golgari agent down beneath in the comments section. Be sure to mention any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, ideas, or stories you have regarding them. That being said, I hope you have a great day, and if you'd like to get a free one-shot, please just go to the Guildhall, use code WELCOME, and there you go. Now I hope you have a wonderful day, and as always, happy adventuring, everyone.